Mic check, mic check. I think we good to go, y'all. Hold on, let me stop this thing. All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praise to you. How about Shem Yahweh Shabbat and sincere greeting to all the brothers and sisters scattered across the four corners, teaching this word with sincerity and charity. All right, Brother Feeney is here. Prince Power Israelites. Wednesday class. Maccabean Revolt. Wednesday class. Wednesday's class. I know y'all eager and ready to get up in here. Let me drop that link real quick in the comments. Shalom and all the brothers and sisters, all of Israel that's watching, that'll tune in or tune in even later. Give a hearty shalom, say shalom. I need y'all to have them thinking caps on with this one. All right, we need the thinking caps on with this one. Somebody give me a put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. If someone can also put fair use, make sure y'all like the video. Hit that like button so we can get that algorithm going. Yeshua Yahuda, what is up, my brother? What is up? I did that video for you too on the I forget what it was, but I did keep my word. I think it's about a video. If it ain't the next video, so the video probably prior. Maybe 2 videos back. I did not forget about you. We do have audio. Appreciate you throughout October. I got Brother Dion, Brother Alazar in this thing. Obey your slave master. I need y'all to have the thinking caps on for this one. Shalom, brothers.
Hey, shalom. Y'all bashing my sabakata.
Y'all bashing my shkata.
Shalom.
I need us to have the thinking caps on. Now, I really wasn't planning on doing this one today. I seen this video on Instagram, and I'm like, man, I gotta talk about that, man. And so I kind of squeeze some stuff together. If you've been in this thing any little minute, you probably, or if you're just dealing with the Bible, period, you've probably come across someone trying to tell you or try to get you away from the Bible based off of slaves obey your master. You know, the white man put that in there, and we can't be I ain't finna read nothing that's telling me to obey my slave master. And we go, to the nearest captivity that we've experienced, or that our forefathers experienced, and current day with what we dealing with, and it does have a bad tone to it. Now, if you've seen the title page, the title picture rather, that was created by the Atheist Society, atheist.org or something like that. They are the ones that put that up. It's telling people, hey, especially Negroes, why would y'all believe in that Bible if that is saying that? I want to watch this video right here and see see what y'all think about this little clip here. It's only 3 minutes. Can y'all hear that? Nope, y'all can't. Can y'all hear that now?
Sir, hey, I'm not resisting. He's trying to snatch me out my car. He's trying to snatch me out my car. He's trying to snatch me out. He's trying to snatch me out my car. Somebody listen. Hey, hey, listen.
We're trying to get you driving out of license.
I'm not driving. I'm traveling, sir. I do not drive, sir. You can't do that, sir. You can't do this, sir. Hey, hey. Shit. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this, sir. Hey, you can't do this to me. You can't do this to me, sir. You can't do this to me, sir. Sir, you can't do this to me. You can't do this to me. Hey, look, hey, listen. Hey, listen. Hey, you can't do this to me. Hey, He got a gun. He got a gun. Hey, he got a gun. He got a gun.
Who is he talking to? Who is he crying out to? Who is he crying for help to?
Right now, the audience.
The audience. He wants the audience to help him out of this situation. What should the audience tell him?
Better call on the Lord.
The audience should tell them you need to agree with your adversaries quickly.
That is, and see, I know y'all can't see how small that is, but it's there. Prince of Power 12. That's not us, but it is us, because everybody's Prince of Power. Those that are within this truth. All right, but there go that. Yep, this you on it. Yashar is on it. All right, we double-minded. Man. In one instance, we want to be Moors. We kicking that Moorish doctrine. And then, you know you an Israelite also. We'll see his name at the end of this video. But the brother who posted this or sister who posted this, Prince of Power 12, like, again, it's not me, but they put that, that's why they uploaded the video, to tell brothers and sisters to agree with your adversary quickly. Okay? But let's continue watching. We have a couple more minutes on here.
I'm not threatening. Hey, he has a gun. He has a gun on me that just tased me. Hey, listen. There's a cop back here with a gun. They just tased me. I have no weapon.
Now, too, I must tell you, if the cops tase you and that don't work, you immune to that taser, you a major threat at that point. It's only certain people that are immune to those tasers, and usually they kind of, it's something wrong when they're not affected by those tasers, especially for white officers, man, Edomite officers. They already intimidated off the gate just because of who you're a black man, you're a steer black man, looking mighty with your beard, so forth, and then you ain't got no license, you ain't got no license. It's a problem once they done went to that first non-violent point. Now this ain't gonna get graphic, so you ain't got to take the kids nowhere. It's not. It's a little spooky, but it ain't. Nobody's gonna get harmed in this video. Nobody's gonna die. Let me say that. Or I don't even think, not even beaten on camera or anything like that. So
I have no weapon. I'm no threat. I have no weapon. Hey, listen. Hey, somebody. Listen, this shit is real. He got a gun on me. Look. He got his gun drawn on me. Hey, I'm no threat. Y'all look. He has a gun on me. He has a gun. Somebody. Hey, listen. Hey, he has a gun drawn on me. Hey, he has a gun. Somebody. Hey, I'm on the highway. I'm on Thick Pen Trail, headed to court. And here's another one with the gun. Hey, they got a gun. They finna shoot me. They trying to shoot me. Look at him. He got a gun. He trying to shoot me. Hey, he trying to bust my window. Hey, they trying to bust my window. Hey, look, they just bust my window. Hey, man, you can't do that, man. Hey, listen, this shit is real. He just bust my window. For what? I have a right. Hey, look, he just bust the window. Hey, he just bust my, he just bust the window. Hey, he just bust the window. Hey, sir, I am no threat, sir. I am no threat.
You refuse to get out of the car.
No, you
You're
can't.
not by my orders.
Sir, what are you doing, sir? Sir, what are you doing? Sir, you can't do that, sir. You cannot do that, sir. Sir, you cannot do this to me. Sir, look, they bust the window. Look, they bust the window. They snatched me out. Hey, they snatched me out.
The brother's very lucky, man. You know, I don't expect when I have them situations, and I'll tell you coming my crazy story, but jokers don't expect to get that, told that many times, giving an order and bucking and refusing to do something. And you ain't got no license. That, and that's the thing, man. You can't be double minded. You can't be getting into this more stuff. I don't know if y'all caught that, but at the end, his name was Yeshua Bay. So he had that Bay at the end of his name, and he's trying to deal with that Moorish doctrine on, I'm just a traveler. I'm just a traveler, and I have the right. I have the right to. I'm not driving. I'm traveling. Trying to run this game, and then it's like, man, that stuff ain't going. It may work 1 out of 100 times, but don't put yourself in these situations. And a lot of times, our brothers and sisters are putting ourselves in these situations because we have legal problems that we trying to run away from, and then we get into get involved into these things. So, of course, that we don't have to go to that Matthew 5:25. But we will deal with the obey your slave master. I also want to we're going to watch one more video on slavery in ancient Rome. Just to give us, that's what I'm telling y'all to put on your thinking caps. Matter of fact, let's go, if I got a reader, man, let's go to John 8:32. John 8:32. Yeah, John 8:32. Let me see if I can pull up Blue Letter 2 here.
I should lock you.
Go ahead, out.
The only other time you said if a person, sometimes them prongs from that, what's the name, don't go straight. So I'm seeing big cats just pull them things off or just walk right through them things.
Right.
And I done seen young little cats, I don't know if this the trajectory or whatever, but it might skin you or whatever. But I understand what you're saying as far as if that don't bother you, but there's always that chance that sucker don't get all the way in,
Yeah, con it is. But yeah, like you said, I done seen jokers pull them. I done seen jokers with their shirt off.
Yeah.
It shook them a little bit, but it just made them mad. It just made it mad, and they like, nah, and where they end up using lethal force, or I done seen them run. I done seen them actually start running, and once that done get these jokers down.
But your adrenaline too, you know what I mean? At that time, your adrenaline flowing might not give it that full effect, because 8 out of 10 times, you better drop flat like a fish.
Right, exactly. And usually they hitting you because you don't really know you about to get hit. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a, you kind of bucking a little bit, but you trying to just, you just trying to tell them what's going on, and that you can't be doing this, I have rights, blah blah blah, and then you might just get hit out of the blue. But some of these jokers, like, they get high off this, like this fentanyl and all this stuff, man. That stuff turn these jokers into superheroes, monsters, man. Where they ain't feeling nothing. I forget what drug that was, man. Joker eating people's faces and stuff, man. Just brutal. Taking off their clothes. Man, I seen one joker take off his clothes and rip the bumper off a car, off of just a random car.
Dang.
In the middle of the street, and just rip the bumper off.
My cousin used to pull mailboxes out the ground off of them happy sticks.
Man.
Yes, sir. He fought like 5 police at one time.
Yeah.
Them taser wasn't doing nothing to him.
Nope, it ain't doing nothing to him. Yeah.
Hey, Shalakia.
Go ahead,
switching the gears a little bit, and like a lot of that Moorish science, man, think they know the law. They don't have to have license. They don't have to have license tags. They get into that Moorish science thinking they don't have to obey the laws of the land, and You know, we gotta understand it's two different systems for us, man. What are you?
We'll get into that too. We're gonna hit that Romans 13 also on it.
Where we at that,
Yeah, but
John?
that's very Yeah, John
I'm
8:32.
Shalaki.
8:32, 8:33.
Khan. This is St. John chapter 8 and verse 32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. They answered him, We be Abraham's seed, and we were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? The Messiah,
Keep going. Yeah, Shalaki.
Messiah answered them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth. The Son abideth ever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me, because my word have no place in you. I speak.
And Shalakia. So that truth make you free. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. All right, and look look what he's using. He's using the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth forever. All right, the slave, he ain't gonna be there forever, but the Son will, eventually he'll inherit, whatever the Father had, and he will be there. He'll abide forever. But I just wanted to bring that out, just dealing with all the parables. I just want you to go back and think about all the parables, all the time servant is used, because servant really is slave. It's really just, they just make it nice for you in the translation. But if we go to the let's see if we can go to the Greek here. Y'all see my screen?
Come.
Servant, bondman. Look, a slave, a bondman, a man of servile condition, a slave. All right, and then you got a metaphorically used for it, one who gives himself up to another's will, those whose service is used by Christ in extending and advancing the cause of among men. Devoted to another, disregard one's interest, a servant, attendant, but ultimately it is a slave. Now, servant sounds better, but a servant is a slave. But I also want us to look at Abraham's. I mean, not Abraham, but I want you to listen to the what the Pharisees are saying back. They said, and they answered and said, verse 33, we be Abraham's seed and were never in bondage to any man. Now, would somebody say that if they're in bondage at that moment?
No.
Maybe.
It says we were never in bondage to any man.
Right. Yeah, I get what it's saying, but when you go back into slavery, you had two types of slaves, right? You had one that was in a house, and he was getting the perks. So for him, it didn't feel like slavery. But if you ask the ones that was in the field, they have a different outlook on slavery. So like that's why I say maybe. You know what I mean? Because Christ did say that we was enslaved. He said we was in bondage, that they who do the kings of the earth take tribute from their own for strangers. So he did reference that Israel was under the hands of the Romans. So that's why I say maybe. But I yield.
And this is why I need y'all to have, we gotta have our thinking caps on for this one. And that's why we finna watch this video on slavery in ancient Rome. Because we weren't taught it. We taught, what we know is that transatlantic slave trade. That is the slavery we know. We don't get into the Assyrian slavery. We don't get into the Babylonian slavery and how they did things, or how the Romans did things. And you're gonna be surprised You're gonna be surprised at this video. So, did Matthew have like a literal master? Did Luke have a master? Did the Pharisees have a master to the extent of, you know, being a real, like being a slave? Not like, yes, they're under Roman authority to an extent. They are under Roman authority. We do have to pay tribute to the Romans, but Judea does have a king. But the king was, you know, the king is in alliance with the Romans. But Judea does have you got King Herod there over them. So a lot of these Pharisees probably had slaves. Like this person who's actually speaking and saying he's never been a slave could have had slaves himself. But let's go to Romans 13:1 since we there, and then we'll watch the video. It's only 10 minutes, y'all. Don't you know how we used to be in school when the teacher brought out that TV with the VCR tape and pushed that TV in there.
I
Jokers
used to
started
stack up
adjusting
my
their
books.
seats. Yeah.
Shalakia. Yes, sir. Pull them books from underneath and stack them things up. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Jokers started muting their mics and sit their phone. Let me go get something to eat. This joker finna play a 10-minute video. I'll be back. Romans 13:1. We're gonna read down to 17.
This is Romans chapter 13:1. And it reads, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor.
That's all I wanted out, Shalaki. I meant 1 and 7. And you know that was actually very is actually very heavy there. You know, whoso therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God. For rulers are not terror to good works. You doing good works, you know, these rulers should not be a terror to good works, but to evil. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. All right, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon them that doeth evil. Man, give them their taxes, man. And I know a lot of us, you know, it's tax season, and you know, some of us done put them things in December 30th, and then some of us are ducking it high. Like, you know, I ain't paying them folks again this year. But and then you cause yourself some problems. You know, you doing taxes, man. Them folks do not play. That IRS do not play. To render unto them all their dues and their tribute, and honor whom you should honor, and fear to whom you should fear. And
Hey, Shalakia.
go ahead, Op.
Donald Trump ain't paid taxes in 3 years, man. I ain't paying no taxes, brother.
You got to know the game. Donald tried to get y'all the game, but you know, even though they pretend like they own Donald by them taxes, they say, man, we want to see them things, man. We want to see them things. You know, shoot. If they doing that to Donald, man, you know, we would have already been up under the jail for $50. $50, man. They would have been calling, trying to take the car, trying to take the house. You know, even Master P, man. Look at you know, you was talking about Master P and what he was going through. You know what I'm saying, with them taxes, and had to end up just giving them that whole house, giving them that house with the gold tank.
And the gold toilet bowls, and the gold cabot seats.
Right.
That's crazy, man. When you really think about that, boy. When you really think about it, man, this dude was doing his own promoting, but they still want a piece of what you build. Like I think that's, and Donald Trump, you say you got to know the game. That Donald Trump ain't got no game. What game has he got? Donald Trump is doing this in front of everyone as the president. Donald Trump is doing this. Come on, man.
Oh, well, Art just said too. He said got that get out of jail class, that that jail pass go card.
Yeah,
collect 200 mil. Pass
right.
go collect 200. So we gonna watch this little video, man. It ain't. It's not a. It's a nice little video. It ain't just, you know, blah blah blah. Just somebody that's kind of monotone and then. But it is 10 minutes. Can y'all see my screen?
Huh.
But it is a little mono, I guess. Oh man, this ain't what I wanted. My bad, y'all. Hold on.
I thought that was somebody wet or something, brother. I thought it was...
This is what I want. This one here. That was another one I tried to watch, man. It was trash though.
Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this first.
Slave labor was a huge
There we
aspect
go.
of Roman life,
See,
and
this
the
a lot
Republic
better.
depended heavily on free work from human beings who had no rights, no possessions, and were left at the whims of their masters to be worked to death, starved, tortured, and sometimes even killed for the sake of enjoyment. Sure, you may have seen Russell Crowe play one in a movie, but chances are you have no idea just how brutal it really was. Today we're exploring what it was really like to be a Roman slave. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. Oh, and one more thing, leave a comment and let us know what topics you would like to hear about. Now, we roam. Slaves in ancient Rome didn't just work as domestic or agricultural workers. They did pretty much every single kind of menial job you can imagine. Generally classified as urban or rural, slaves did everything from cooking and cleaning to mining for silver. On country estates, slaves might perform both domestic and non-domestic tasks, even working as smiths, bakers, and guards. Occasionally, urban slaves would work as accountants and managers for businessmen. If you were a slave that originated as a prisoner of war, you might have been sold off to the public and could have been tasked with fighting fires, tending to public buildings, and even working as an executioner. Some Roman slaves lived their entire lives from birth to death working as the property of a master, but others, who were able to cough up a little dough, had a luckier fate. The oldest and easiest way for a slave to achieve freedom was simply being given freedom by one's master, perhaps in a will, although some sort of ceremony or payment usually went along with it. Some folks became slaves by selling themselves into servitude to repay their debts over a certain amount of time. If that was the case, you'd be freed as soon as your contract was complete. Slaves could also accumulate money by giving a peculium, or account, that they controlled while under the authority of a master. This type of wealth could be land or currency, and although it was technically still under the control of the master, slaves could use this as a tool to purchase their freedom. After buying their freedom, slaves didn't just magically become become full-fledged Roman citizens, though. After the process of manumission, aka buying your freedom, these former slaves were more like conditional citizens and became clients of their former owners. They were also restricted from taking public office. And if you were under the age of 30 and wanted to buy your way out of servitude, you were completely out of luck. According to the Roman jurist Gaius, slaves under the age of 30 could not be freed during the 1st century CE. Being a slave was cruel and unbearable during any time period, and the Roman slaves were no exception. Slaves who were considered property of the masters were expected to behave, and if they didn't, the consequences were nightmare fuel. In Maniacomi by Plautus, the 2nd century playwright attributes the following words to Messenio, a slave: stripes, fetters, the mill, weariness, hunger, bitter cold, fine pay for idleness. That's what I'm mightily afraid of. Surely then, it's much better to be good than to be bad. I don't mind tongue lashings, but I do hate real floggings. Yikes. Slave owners could beat and punish slaves harshly, inflicting everything from whippings to chains and fetters. Masters also had free rein to sell their slaves, execute them by hanging or crucifixion, and make them do the worst possible tasks as punishment. And if you tried to run away, they'd brand you. Ouch! Nothing sounds less appetizing than limited rations of bread, right? Well, slaves, being the lowest rung of Roman society, were clearly not eating like kings. This guy, Cato the Elder, who was a soldier, statesman, and historian from the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, wrote about the daily needs of agricultural slaves, specifically what they should receive for food and drink. According to Cato, slaves should receive wheat to make bread, although shackled slaves who couldn't grind their own grain were to receive bread itself. When slaves worked the fields during the...
Now, like, this joker here is like a biblical Jim Crow. He's writing, telling them, hey man, this is how you need to, this is what these
soldier,
slaves need to be
statesman,
eating.
and historian from the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE wrote about the daily needs of agricultural slaves, specifically what they should receive for food and drink. According to Cato, slaves should receive wheat to make bread, although shackled slaves who couldn't grind their own grain were to receive bread itself. When slaves worked the fields during the summer, more flour was needed, as was additional wine. If we were working in the hot Roman fields all summer for no money, we'd be in need of additional wine too. In addition to bread and wine, slaves ate what Cato termed relish. This Roman relish, however, was not exactly what you'd find on a baseball stadium hot dog. Instead of pickles, it was made of olives. During the 1st century BCE, slaves rounded out their diets by gathering wild fruits and vegetables, as well as cultivating crops on their own. Domestic slaves got the opportunity to start urban gardens. Of course, they always had the option of picking at their master's leftovers. While most slaves functioned as a coerced unpaid labor pool, some enslaved men and women got to join the ranks of criminals and prisoners of war in the gladiator ring. Made up mostly from slaves, the first gladiatorial contests appeared as early as the 3rd century BCE. One famous slave, Spartacus, was actually trained in one of Rome's gladiator schools. And if the idea of a gladiator school sounds cool to you, let's just say these gladiator training academies weren't exactly sleepaway camps. Gladiators in training were treated more or less like prisoners, but did receive food, medical attention, and specialized apparatus training. Treated more like investments than human beings, these performers weren't slain very often. They were too valuable, according to archaeologist Wolfgang Neubauer. Many former slaves also volunteered to be gladiators. With limited opportunities after buying their freedom, aka manumission, they essentially gave themselves back to servitude, swearing a gladiatorial oath to be burned by fire, bound by chains, to be beaten, to die by the sword. Okay, for an oath, we've got to admit, the gladiator oath is pretty hardcore. But you got to imagine conditions for freed slaves had to be pretty terrible if they were earnestly volunteering to fight to the death. One thing that urban and rural slaves had in common was that they both lived in rooms that were typically far removed from their masters and overseers. Domestic servants still lived in their master's house, sometimes even sleeping close enough to tend to his or her needs overnight. But there was a decided effort to keep slaves separate from free men and women. Typically, a slave's quarters would be located near storage facilities and were usually shared with other slaves. Imagine a bunk bed next to a garage, but Roman.
Hey, have you ever heard something like this before? Who wants to make $1 zillion online without having to do a single
fair use also. Fair use.
If
Somebody
you were a Roman slave,
type,
chances are your style game
fair
wasn't
use in the
exactly on
comments,
point.
please.
Slaves were forced to wear simple clothing, not much different than garments worn by poor freemen and women. Masters provided a tunic of 3 feet and a half and a cloak once in 2 years. If you had a long torso, seems like you'd be out of luck. Also, once in 2 years, good shoes should be given. Imagine only getting 1 pair of shoes every 2 years. And this is during a time when duct tape didn't exist. To add insult to injury, male slaves weren't allowed to wear the one quintessential Roman fashion garment, togas. Female slaves were also forbidden from wearing stolas, a dress worn over their tunic. According to Seneca, the Roman Senate once considered instituting a uniform for slaves to more clearly distinguish them in society. They ultimately decided against it to prevent slaves from knowing just how many of their ranks existed. Bone-chilling. Why would the Roman Senate be concerned that the slaves knew how many of them there were? Well, because there were a lot of them. I mean, a lot. The sheer number of slaves in Roman society resulted in tension and fears about revolt. Romans had a right to be worried. Slave tensions were rising in the Roman Empire, and it was only a matter of time before large-scale revolts began to bubble up. Aside from minor skirmishes, there was one famous large-scale slave rebellion that truly posed a risk to Roman society. Remember Spartacus, who we talked about earlier? The slave who was sent to train at gladiator school? Well, that same guy grew up to lead a slave revolt that included around 70,000 slaves and supporters fighting the Roman army. Now those are some serious numbers. Spartacus and his forces fought against the Roman military several times from 73 to 71 BCE, defeating them 3 times before being slain. According to sources, Spartacus fought valiantly to the end, wounded by a spear thrust in the thigh, but went down on one knee, held a shield in front of him, and fought off his attackers until he and a great number of his followers were encircled and fell. While Spartacus and his army may have lost in the end, their fight didn't amount to nothing. Concerns over future uprisings prompted some legal action to ensure, or at least encourage, better treatment of slaves. Unlike other historical forms of slavery, Roman slavery was not dependent upon race or ethnicity, and the number of slaves varied at any given time. After the Punic Wars during the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, thousands of men and women were enslaved, many of whom served as artisans, craftsmen, and agricultural laborers. As the empire expanded, Rome took more and more prisoners of war, and tons of non-Romans were enslaved, including individuals from Greece, Egypt, North Africa, Gaul, and Asia Minor. Apparently, Rome was an equal opportunity slave nation, I guess. Female slaves were not exempt from manual labor, but they often performed personal duties under the auspices of elite and wealthy Roman women. Slaves could be trained to apply cosmetics and do hair, kind of like a glam squad that's forced to be there and doesn't get paid. Other female slaves even served as wet nurses for wealthy Roman women. That is, one bad boob job. Empress Livia, Augustus's wife, had more than 1,000 attendants, many of whom were female and male slaves alike. Female slaves were also vulnerable to the whims of male masters and could end up as the unfortunate victims of sexual abuse, sometimes with the masters charging a fee for the male slaves to engage in these heinous acts. Surrounded by all this pain and suffering, it's no wonder female and male slaves alike were itching to jump into the gladiator ring. Slavery was pervasive and fundamental to the Roman economy, but there were different opinions on how slaves should be viewed in Roman society. Stoics, most notably Seneca the Younger, wrote about the relationship between slave and master, emphasizing the humanity of the former alongside the responsibility of the latter to be kind and paternalistic. According to Seneca, a slave sprang from the same stock, is smiled upon by the same skies, and on equal terms with yourself breathes, lives, and dies. Former slave Epictetus lived and taught in Rome, also calling for the fair treatment of slaves by masters. Epictetus found slaves to be noble, but is nobility the same as freedom? Not exactly. One thing's for certain, any society that depends on slave labor is not a sustainable and just culture. Good thing slavery fell along with the Roman Empire in 476 CE. What do you think of the hardships faced by Roman slaves? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.
All right, y'all. So, one of the main things that I took from that I seen in there, is that that slavery. I read a couple of articles and stuff, man. It was at one point I read that it was 20 to 25% of Roman population were slaves, and they pretty much did all the little tedious things, pretty much everything. They had all kind of, like I see in the video, man, being firefighters, being guards, being, just the whole system was pretty much based on this captivity. But in some cases, somehow they are getting money. They do have prior possessions that they could sell and try to yield their freedom. But do we see this in Judea? Do we see what we just seen in Judea? Do we see us going through those things in the text? Do we see the disciples going through these things, having masters and in this brutal captivity where they don't have to eat nothing but bread? Are these things happening in Judea? And what did y'all brothers think about the video? Anybody there? Y'all done fell asleep?
No, I'm here.
Yeah, what did y'all think about the video? What did you think?
I mean,
And
I
did you
think
see us? Do you see us in the text going through that? Do you see anybody in the text really, far as Judea, saying anything to us about that, about having that type of captivity or being beaten like that, and just going through having those issues?
But I think seeing that the video opens up that verse we just read about, that brings that to light, because you can see that happening, especially if you weren't out there bucking. If you were basically, you could have been a fisherman, or you could have been minding the grapes, or doing something, doing the woman's hair or something, and you didn't really buck back against him. Then I could see him saying, we would never enslave, we would never enslave to no man, because that you wouldn't seem like that was in slavery. You know what I mean? But just from reading the text, all we always think about, we base the captivities off of the Atlantic slave trade, and that's the harshest one probably. But we look at all of them through the eyes of the Atlantic slave trade. So, we can't see it just being like a servitude type thing, being able to buy your way out type thing. We don't visualize that in the text.
Hey, Shalakia.
Go ahead,
and we gotta understand, it's different. It's different types of slavery. Like,
absolutely.
Like when Bishop Nathaniel was talking to Jason Whitlock, he kept on saying that we in captivity, and Jason Whitlock said, "Well, I'm not in captivity, right?" But when you talk to Israel, we'll be saying, "Yeah, we get this day in our captivity," right? Because sometimes if you became from like what we was to child of slavery, what we went through, and now starting to reap some of these benefits, you will have the illusion that you're free, but never ever think that you still got to fight for so much equality. Don't even understand. No, it's no whips. It's no chains, but it's still around our neck, right? Because we still destroy, but a person who's making it financial, that's what you see in the video, that different qualifications require different rewards. So that's what you see now in America. We still in captivity, right? They still hold Social Security numbers on us. They still got things that we still, according to them, we still 3/5, right? But it's just an illusion of it appeared that we free. So I see the same thing that the Romans did that they doing right now. No, that's why Willie Lindsay said the Romans would envy us, and I think they get the playbook for the Romans. And but yeah, good video, brother.
Yeah, but my question is, in Judea, where you have a Sanhedrin, when you have King Herod, you have your own temple, you having your own feast. Now you still under, just like, well, Haiti's not under the French anymore. But they would have their own elects and so forth. When they were under there, they would have their own elects. They still have their own president, but they're not over there doing what, in the captivity that they were having over there. You know what I'm saying? Far as what the French were doing, or even the French were doing to, what they were doing to the Congo. They may not have it as bad as that. Just like and that's what I'm saying in these wrong. I'm trying to separate the two. Because we see in Judea, I don't see anybody having that issue. I don't see anyone saying they got to go back and, they're following the disciples and they got to go back before their master comes to get them, so forth. But like I said, I first mentioned, we do see a lot of parables and examples being used dealing with slavery, servant, slave, and the slave and the master. It's a lot of parables dealing with that. We're going to go to a few of these things, but for the most part, I see is the tribute. And then I see us saying we free, and then I see, well, you still have to render this tribute and obeying these folks, these folks in this government. That Romans 13 is about as hard as it get. The Romans 13 but the Romans 13 ain't even Judea, because that's in Rome. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to separate the two. That Judea has its own thing. And again, they may have slaves, but the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they known as being rich, and this us having our own synagogues, us having our own, just having our own. You know what I'm saying? Still paying taxes on these things, but it can be viewed as today. Like I said, it can be complicated as it is today, because we do say, hey man, we still in captivity, but at the same time, we could tell that to our brothers Issachar, but Issachar is begging to get over here. He's begging to get into this captivity. Even if another Israelite is saying, well, nah, they're not the Israelites, because they got their own land. They got their own, they in their land. And so that's why I did this video, so that we can see how everything is playing out, and we can really, that's why I said we got to really use our heads with this, and we're going to see some things why ultimately why Paul is telling you this, or telling not necessarily Judea, but telling the Ephesians, telling those that are really in Rome, that are really in these particular areas, dealing with the captivity that we were just seeing. Because like we were saying, it's 25% of them. Some of them were guards. 25% of these folks were slaves. Like almost 500,000 were slaves during that biblical time. Let's look at 1 Corinthians 7. We're gonna read 21 through 24.
This is 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 21. And that was going to be my only question, Nako, was did they have to pay them taxes?
The Judea?
Yeah.
Jews? Yeah, of course. And so we see Christ. That's what I'm saying. These are the hard points that we see, is that, Christ is telling us that we got to pay taxes and pay tribute. We know that render unto Caesar what is his. But, besides that, and then you counter that with the John 8:33. I don't see a lot of issues with the captivity essence of it. They want a different king. They may want a different ruler. They don't want to pay these folks taxes, but Rome don't want to be over them either. Rome just want the money. They don't want to change them into Roman citizens. Roman citizenship is something that is prestige. They're not just giving that away. You have to earn that, and we see that also in the text when the guard is talking to Paul. He said, "Hey, man, you know." And again, the video was saying that some slaves were even guards, and one of these guards was telling Paul, "Man, I had to do a lot to get my citizenship, man. I had to do a lot. How you got yours? How did you get yours?" So we see conversations like that, and this what we just need to understand. So we're gonna go through what's that, 1 Corinthians 7:21. We're gonna go through a few precepts here.
21 through
24.
This is 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 21. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it, but if thou mayest be made free, use it rather.
Now,
For
what is
he
that?
that-
What are we saying there? What are we saying there? Hold on, let me share my screen. What are we saying there? What does that mean? All right, for he that is called in the Lord, being a servant, being a slave, is the Lord's freeman. Oh, no, that's not the verse. I read 21. Art thou being a slave? Art thou a slave? All right.
Are thou called being a slave?
Are thou called? So have you came to this gospel? Have you came to the understanding of Christ and what he did? Being a slave. Right? Being a slave. Because go up to verse 19.
Verse 19, circumcision is nothing and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called.
So, and this is on the stint of if you were circumcised and you would call, okay. If you weren't circumcised and you would call it, it's not a big deal for you to go out there and get circumcised. All right, wherever you was called that, dealing with that, that's what you would call that. If you was a slave, if you were called and you was being a slave, that's what he's asking. But then he says, care not for it, but if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. If you can get free, go ahead and get free. Don't just continue to be a slave. But if you are a slave in this thing, don't worry about it. Don't stress it. But if you can be made free, rather be free. Go ahead to 21.
22.
22, Con.
For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's freeman.
All right. So now he's using that. Those who call being a slave, you were called in this thing and you was a slave. All right. Don't worry about it because you the Lord's freeman. Go ahead.
Is the Lord's likewise also he that is called being free is Christ's servant.
And those that are free are slaves to Christ. You know what I'm saying? No, and he's trying to use this language to show you, man, we the same. But if you in that lot, hey, that's your lot. But understand this. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you was a slave, but you're the Lord's freeman. Hey, you free, but listen, you a slave to Christ. All right, don't think you know better than nobody, whatever the case may be. And I'm bringing this out to show that he's talking to an audience of slaves and free people. His audience is people that are slaves and people that have their freedom. All right, just like he's talking to people that are circumcised, and there's some people that aren't circumcised. Does that make sense? Let me see it in the NLT. 2 Corinthians 7. Y'all can still see my screen. What is 2021? It says, "Are you a slave? Are you a slave? Don't let that worry you. But if you get a chance to be free, take it. And remember, if you are a slave when the Lord called you, you are now free in the Lord. And if you were free when the Lord called you, you are now a slave of Christ. All right. God paid a high price for you, so don't be enslaved by the world. Each of you, dear brothers and sisters, should remain as you were when God first called you." Read that again for me.
Verse 21.
No. I think maybe the last verse there. I'm finna
For
get
he
back
that
there.
is called in the Lord, being a servant, is the Lord's freeman. Likewise, also he that is called, being free, is Christ's servant.
Go ahead to 24.
Ye are brought with a price. Be not ye the servants of men, brethren. Let every man wherein he is called, therein abide with God.
All right, therein abide with God. All right, wherever he is called. All right, therein abide with God. And so we have an audience that Paul's writing to of slaves and freemen. Let's look at well, we probably ain't got time for that. Well, we at 8:30 already. Let's just go ahead to Ephesians 5 and 6. I was gonna do the parable of the unforgiving servant, but y'all could just read that on the other time. It's just a parable about forgiveness, but I'm just using that to show that Yahushua is using a parable of slaves and masters, just to keep that in your head. And all this is to say that all this to bring is that it's there are slaves that are really slaves among this while this whole thing is going on. And for me, it don't look like Jews are partaking as much as it is these people that are what Rome is doing. All right, what Rome is doing up there, this one lady, he had Augustus' wife having 1,000 slaves, and these things ain't as bleeding as much into Judea. Not to say that Jews aren't those slaves also there, but it's not we don't see our brothers and sisters, hey man, we got to get these folks, we got to go buck on Rome to get these folks to free our people. It's not a moment like, that's why I read the John 8:32 where he's saying, hey man, we ain't slaves when we have all this slavery going on that's around them. We have Rome just feel a quarter of their population being slaves. But Paul is going up there. Paul is in those Roman areas, and he's seeing the slavery. And so he's writing to these people, and he's addressing slaves, and he's addressing, those that are free. And these precepts that are to obey your slave master are all by Paul. They're not written by Jews to Jews. All right, these things are written by Paul, could be the Jews dealing with the slavery, because again, it could be some Jews who've been into slavery, also sold themselves into slavery, also even went into that gladiator ring, trying to get some prestige, whatever the case may be. All right, like I say, we just watched a little video, you know what I'm saying? We don't know how it fulfilled. I just want to open our eyes to that, the fact that when Paul's writing this, there is heavy slavery going on within Rome. Well, I said Ephesians 5:6.
This is Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 6. Let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of...
Shalakia, next chapter, verse Ephesians 6 and 5 through 9. I'm sorry.
6 and 5. This is Ephesians 6:5. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters, according
Slaves. All right. Slaves, be obedient. Go ahead.
to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, and singleness of your heart, as unto Christ, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free.
Whether he be bond or free. And we just seen Paul say that a couple of times because he's talking to both of these people. We don't, like I say, when we read it, we just bond free. And I had some stuff on the, I'm not gonna get into it. I have to do it another lesson here. Share this tab instead. But I was gonna get into the barbarians, but the barbarians are not just some people just no, they are a nation of people, a Germanic people that were really 3rd century, 2nd century BC was really tearing Rome up, tearing Rome a new one. And then they name end up becoming a little mockery, but a lot of them were end up slaves, and a lot of them ended up being also in the military, in Roman's military. But they fought long wars with Rome, the barbarians. They had tribes and so forth. But we'll have to get into that another time just for time purposes. Keep going. Where we was at? Did we read verse 9?
Verse 9, and ye masters do the same thing unto them, forbearing threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him.
Con, ain't no respect of persons with him. Now, matter of fact, I had to say Shalakia. There's 3 types of people he's talking to. All right, he's talking to masters, he's talking to slaves, and he has an audience of masters, slaves, and those that are free. All right, talking to 3 different people that could be in the same congregation. You can have a congregation of masters, slaves, and free people. Okay. Colossians 3. Let's go to Colossians 3. Anybody got anything?
Nope.
Go
ahead. Colossians 3 and 22, whenever you get there. We're gonna read down to 25, and then like these are pretty much going into the same things. He's sending these things out. And pretty much saying the same thing here in Colossians and in Titus. We'll go ahead and hit them, and then we're gonna read Philemon or Philemon. Who got the right pronunciation?
Philemon.
Philemon. Y'all know what that is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's my interpretation of it. It could be wrong.
Okay.
I mean, we looked it up. We looked it up one time, and it was different. But yeah. This is Colossians 3 and 22. Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily, as to the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he have done, and there is no respect of persons.
All right, he that does wrong, he that doeth wrong shall receive the wrong which he have done. Reciprocity on that captivity. Where I was going, Titus 2 and 9. And then Philemon.
This is the book of Titus, chapter 2 and verse 9.
So, bro, I can read for you, brother. Hold on for a second. I'll read it. This is the book of Titus, chapter 2, verse 9. It said, exhort servants to be obedient unto their own master, and to please them well in all things, not answering again. Not go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's like it. Oh, hold on for a second, dog. Right there. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. What's going on with the number? Okay, there we go. It says, not what is that?
Purloining.
Purloining, by showing all good fidelities, that they may adore the doctrine of God, our Savior, in all things.
All right, so you being a light. And again, he's telling this because both are in that congregation. Masters and slaves are there. All right, masters and slaves are coming into the gospel. So he's telling the slaves, he's telling the slaves to do right. He's telling the masters to make sure you do right. I can almost see an instance where they going. Like, hey man, like, this joker keep acting crazy, going to the church for answers, or going to Israel for answers, or going to the synagogue for answers on how to deal with these relations between master and slave. All right, and Paul's having to address these things. These letters are going because he's having to address these issues. Especially I can see somebody coming in and hearing, hearing about Christ, and we don't respect the persons, we the same, and we, hey man, listen, you got to treat your brother this way and so forth, man. This our relationship can't operate like this. And Paul's having to address these things. Let's look at Philemon, because Philemon is a slave master. All right, and Paul is writing a letter to Philemon, a slave master, while he's sending back his slave that ran away, Onesimus. All right, and for me, I don't really, like I say, I'm just seeing this thing, so I can't just say nothing conclusive, but I don't feel that neither one of these are Israel. I feel like these are two Gentiles. This is Philemon is a Gentile, and I feel like Onesimus is probably a Gentile slave. And I want us to think about that too, is that it's not just because we got that transatlantic in our head so much, but it's not just, it's all these nations that Rome has conquered. They are slaves. All right. It's all kinds of people are going through this slavery. Rome is not like that. They end up getting like that, but it's not a color thing with Rome. It's a nationality thing, or it's a citizenship thing. And if you were conquered, they're gonna bring you in, and you gonna mess around and be a slave. If you're a casualty of war, you're gonna come in and be a slave. So it's different from the transatlantic, but we think we put all the rules of slavery and try to place them on all these different captivities, and some were definitely harsher than others. If before I did this, I didn't think that Roman society had that many slaves and were doing, crucifying them and whipping them I seen Spartacus. Spartacus was actually a series on Cinemax or Showtime, one of them, that had a few seasons. I watched all of it to the point of him. I didn't know it was real though. I didn't know it was based off of somebody that was real. And he eventually won all the gladiator battles, and he earned his freedom. And when he earned his freedom, he went back to that spot and killed his master and freed them slaves and freed them gladiators from what all we did. And so then they went back and started freeing all the gladiators, and Rome didn't want no. He had 70,000, not because these folk done been trained up some of them from their birth to be gladiators. And these folks are end up, defeating Rome a few times, and then eventually they end up getting defeated. But let's go ahead and read this, and then we'll start just having closing remarks.
Just read the whole thing.
Con ain't, but Con.
Con, this,
Ain't with one child, dog.
this is Philemon. Paul, a prisoner.
Oh, Shalaki. I'm in the wrong. I'm in the wrong book. I'm in Philippians.
Oh,
I don't even know if I can get to. Okay, now we in Philemon. Yeah, ain't nothing but it's about the same. 25.
okay.
Go ahead.
Paul, a prisoner of Jesus Christ, and Timothy, our brother unto Philemon, our dearly beloved and fellow laborer, and to our beloved Aphia and Archippus, our fellow soldier, and to the church in thy house. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord the Hamashiach Yahushua.
And so
I think
listen, Philemon actually has a church at his house. Go ahead, Shalaki.
I thank God, I thank my God, making mention of thee always in my prayers, hearing of thy love and faith which thou hast toward the Lord Jesus and toward all saints, that the communication of thy faith may become effectual by the knowledging of every good thing which is in you in Christ Jesus. For we have great joy and consolation in thy love, because the bowels of the saints are refreshed by thee, brother. Wherefore, though I might be much bold in Christ to enjoin thee that which is convenient, yet for love's sake I rather beseech thee, being such an one as Paul, the aged, and now also a prisoner of the Messiah. I beseech thee for my son Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my bonds, which in time past was to thee unprofitable, but now profitable to thee and to me, whom I have sent again, thou therefore receive him, that is mine own bowels, whom I would have retained with me, that in thy stead he might have ministered unto me in the bonds of the gospel. But without thy mind would I do nothing, that thy benefit should not be as it were of necessity, but willingly. For perhaps he therefore departed for a season, that thou shouldest receive him forever, not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother beloved, especially of me, but how much more unto thee, both in the flesh and in the Lord.
Come. Now look. He's saying, hey man, in my bonds, you know what I'm saying? I could have used them. I could have used Onesimus, man, especially in the bond of this gospel. He's been ministering in his gospel with me, a fellow laborer. But you know what I'm saying, what my mind wouldn't let me do without your consent. I can't just, evidently Onesimus done told Paul, how he done ran off. And told him the whole story, and the Spirit telling him, hey man, I'm about to, you're gonna have to roam that, but we sending you back, but not as a slave, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of times we read that servant, we think something, we think the indentured servitude, yeah, it's a little better, yeah, it's like a job, but sometimes that servant is really slave, So he's sending you back not as a slave, but as a brother, all right, above a slave. He left a slave, but he's returning to you. I want you to treat him as a brother. Go ahead, Art.
Verse 17. If thou count me therefore a partner, receive him as myself. If he have wronged thee or owed thee out, put that on mine account. I, Paul, have written it with mine own hand. I will repay it, albeit I do not say to thee how thou owest unto me even thine own self besides. Yea, brother, let me have joy in thee in the Lord. Refresh my bowels in the
And I had
Lord.
to look at that right there, like, I will repay it, albeit I do not say to thee how thou owest me even thine own self besides. And I feel like he's saying, like, hey man, I pay it even though, bro, you owe me you owe me your life
Ah,
because of what I've what I've taught you in this gospel. Um but that's what it looks like to me, but I'll double check it. But that's how that's. And again, man, when we see these things, don't just keep reading. Make sure what's being said here. Go ahead.
con. Having confidence in thy obedience, I wrote unto thee, knowing that thou wilt also do more than I say. But withal, prepare me also a lodging, for I trust that through your prayers I shall be given unto you. There salute thee Epaphras, my fellow prisoner of the Messiah, Marcus, Aristarchus, Demas, Lucas, my fellow laborers. The grace of our Lord the Messiah be with you, be with your spirit. Amen.
All right, amen. So we see Paul writing that letter before he go back. And and I'm sure he probably told Onesimus, man, just go ahead and go back. But Onesimus was like, nah, man, I might need a little letter or something. You talk to him. Talk to him for me because he may trip out, And this was might have, and it's hinting that Onesimus might have took something when he left. Might have left with something, man. And with some coins or something. He said, whatever he left with, man, if he owe you something, man, hey, charge it to me. Charge it to me, and I ain't gonna hold it against you, even though you owe me life. What I'm saying, through these teachings of the Hamashiach Yahushua. But go ahead and go down there. So, Nicodemus might have been, hey, needed that letter. He might have took it with him when he left out. Probably the case. But again, we see a slave and a master relationship. And I think this was a Gentile problem. So like when we seeing like the title page that we seen with the yokes around our neck, and they're using that, and they only using that to show black people in captivity. What if that was a white Roman with a white barbarian and them putting them in captivity? Because that was the time frame when these things are being written. I don't think these things are placed in here or were placed in here to say that, hey, see, they put that in the Bible when they brought us over here to keep us from docile and so forth, and to justify slavery, because slavery been here very, 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 very long, very long, very long time. Even you see us having law statutes for how to have slavery and how to do it. And it's gonna be here a long time, and it's gonna be here even when Christ returns. Brothers have anything they wanted to add, or anything that might have stood out or might have been problematic?
No, I think it opened my eyes a little bit to the different layers of slavery. Um, I know there was servitude, and I know there was indentured servants, and I know folks could buy their way out, but it puts a softer connotation on slavery, like it wasn't that bad as some dispensations. It wasn't as bad. Like I think it makes it seem like the Atlantic slave trade was the worst.
I feel that the Atlanta trade was probably worse, but I'm not saying that what the Romans were doing weren't bad either. Um, I'm not saying, like them crucifying, them whipping, them putting the whips on their back, them being crucified. Even with all that stuff Paul went through. Paul even got whipped a couple times. And if I go back and look at it, I gotta go back and look at it. But it was probably Israel that whipped him, or they probably sent him to Roman authority to get those lashings because of him having citizenship. So, when you see certain things, like you go back to that Herodian class, you see where the Pharisees are going to the Herodians to try to bring up persecution, or going to the chief men and women. We was talking about that, trying to get them kicked out of the cities or to get some kind of judgment on these people. So, I just want us to go back and look through the text. All right, honestly, we'll just have to go back and look through the text. And I think this slave master thing opens up a little more when we understand that, man, this thing it's still a very heavy amount of slavery going on while we're, during the times of the New Testament, doing these New Testament writings. Everything ain't just cool. There's a lot of slavery going on during those times. So when you see Paul addressing it, he's addressing it not for something that was to come, but for that very moment that in history they for them to obey their slave masters and so forth, because he's addressing all of them. All of them are within the same congregation. Now, if you've seen a pastor, can you imagine a pastor during the transatlantic slave trade giving that same message to masters and slaves in the same room, while they done routed them up? He's probably that owner, that slave owner, that master is probably gonna want to kill that pastor, like we seen in that movie Birth of a Nation. So he's not gonna let you sit up there and tell you, well, the masters, y'all better treat the slaves the same way. You better treat the slaves good too, because if you have a master that's up in heaven, and unto you, whatever you do for your slave is going to end up happening to you. If he was to teach that, go in that congregation and teach that amongst them slaves and master, man, please, he wouldn't make it out. He wouldn't make it off that plantation. But I yield, man. I hope this thing was edifying, man. I hope we just, again, just look at another lens when we see servants in the text. And a lot of these parables that Yahushua was bringing out, dealing with the servants and the master and so forth, it's because this culture is in the text. This is what's going, like, this thing is going on out there. And it's not just a white on black thing. Them Romans was snatching up everybody. Again, pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. Anybody got anything for us? Shalom.
Nah, good lesson, brother.
All right, shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.